Welcome then to Game Day, 20th of June, 1867. The date, Thursday, 20th of June, 1867, the Corpus Christi holiday. Although this first game of association football in South America should have been held on the independence celebrations of the 25th of May, but the field was flooded. The place, the grounds of the Buenos Aires Cricket Club in Palermo, on the outskirts of Buenos Aires. And the players, well, we'd hoped to have more, but a lack of commitment from the men who promised to come and try out means that we were reduced to just 8 players on either side. The teams for this illustrious game were led by the town's principal football aficionados, Mr. Thomas Hogg and Mr. Walter Heald. Hogg, 24 years old and from Skelton in North Yorkshire, and Heald, 26, from Pendle in Lancashire. Heald was an accountant and acted as secretary and treasurer of the club. He was an assiduous diary keeper too, and described the events when he got home, exhausted at the end of the day. It's thanks to him and his account in the newspapers and his diary that survives in the John Rylands Library in Manchester that we know anything about this game. It was only 4 years since the agreement of the laws of the game by the Football Association in London, which specified there would be no hacking, limited carrying, 2 posts for goals, no specific goalkeeper. One of the challenges that we face, though, of course, is that there are no films of the event, precious little journalism beyond what Mr. Heald wrote, and so it's left to our imagination to try and work out what happened. Well, Hogg and Heald were amongst the committee members of the Buenos Aires Football Club, which was founded in a local guest house on 9th of May 1867. Each of the members was paying a 30 peso subscription per season. They'd agreed, according to the Standard newspaper, that the rules of the Football Association be adopted with some slight modifications. We do not know, of course, what those modifications were, though they were probably something in favour of a carrying version of the game. Anyway, on to the match. We're off. Well, we don't really have many accounts of how the game played off, so we'll have to use the sources that survive to us and our imagination to a degree. This is what the Standard said. Football match. The club opened its season on Thursday last by a spirited contest between sides chosen on the ground. There had been considerable difficulty in finding ground suitable for the match, and at the last moment application had to be made to the Cricket Committee for leave to play on their ground at Palermo, and the best thanks of the football club are due to the ready permission given to make use of the cricket field. There weren't so many players as had been expected. Many of those who promised to join the game seemed to prefer to see how the first meeting would go off. The match kicked off at 12:30, lasted for around 2 hours. Was there much running or shooting? Did players take up positions? It's hard for us to tell at this distance. So instead, like the best commentators, let's talk about the players and their backgrounds. The next day's Standard listed the 8 players who lined up on each side, provided by Walter Heald. He and Hogg seemed to have been knocking on the doors of their friends in the guest houses that gave accommodation to newly arrived migrants that Thursday morning, rather than putting out a notice and awaiting the floods of enthusiastic footballers. If we dig into the archival sources, we can get a sense of who these footballing pioneers were. The United Kingdom census records for 1851, when all of these players were children, gives us an excellent sense of their family backgrounds, their connections and the sporting cultures they brought with them to Buenos Aires. First, we have Theodore Barlow Smith, the son of the Sheffield-born, Cambridge University-educated vicar of Stony Middleton, the Reverend Urban Smith. We have Walter Heald, captain, and the son of a Manchester undertaker's assistant and a cotton piecer. In 1851, the young brothers Hogg, Thomas and James, were living in the village of Skelton in North Yorkshire, where they'd been born, in a household headed by their unmarried 65-year-old uncle William Appleton, who farmed 195 acres and employed 12 labourers. Some of the players on the pitch we know less about. Thomas Jackson was from Cumberland, for example, and he was most likely the son of Elizabeth, a needleworker in Penrith. The founders of the Buenos Aires Football Club therefore include components of the several English currents that flowed into association football. Cambridge University, organised religion, the landed middle class, and the working class of northwest England. They might be cast, therefore, as the epitome of what the historians Kane and Hopkins influentially labelled as the gentlemanly capitalists who formed the backbone of British imperialism in the 19th century. They were aware of their commercial and social networks, possessed of an evangelical zeal regarding hard work and morality, and embracing the space offered by the sports field to improve body and soul. But back to the game. It looks like there's been a goal. Well, let's think of that northwest England feel to the 20-somethings on the field. In terms of occupations, the most high status were Thomas Hogg, who worked for the London and River Plate Bank, John Ransbottom, 28, who was an estanciero or landowner born in Stand, Lancashire. Hild was an employee of the Crab Higgins & Co. Land Company, and Mr. Simpson, who the historian of sport Victor Raffo has identified as Edward T. Simpson, the Manchester-born manager of the Boca and Ensenada Railways. In addition to these guys, there were three people who were traders on the pitch: William Forrester of Burslem, Staffordshire, Herbert Thomas Barge, and Thomas Best of Manchester. Then we have Urban Smith, a stock market agent, and Thomas Hogg was a stock market runner. There were 5 clerks, all a year or two either side of the age of 20: Theodore Barlow Smith, Norman Harry Smith of Birmingham, John Harry Wilmot of Grappan Hall, Cheshire, William Boschetti of St. Lucia in the British West Indies, and James Wensley Bond of Leinster, Ireland. The only 2 non-English born players then were the Irishman Bond and the British colonial subject whose full name was William Muta Newbury Boschetti, born in St. Lucia in Castries, the principal harbour of the colony. He was born into a long-standing British naval family, Boschetti, probably with its roots in northern Italy, and although he was born in St. Lucia, he was probably not the world's first black footballer. But we don't know. Images do not survive. So let's think then, as the game moves towards its conclusion, what rules were they actually playing by, do we know? Well, they were likely to be those that the Hoggs, Hild and the Smiths were used to playing in Skelton, Pendle and Stony Middleton. There was certainly some very rough play. Hild recorded in his diary that evening that he couldn't sleep because of internal damage, probably in the region of the kidneys, caused by a severe blow in the side from his opposing captain, Hogg. We can surmise, I think, that the Buenos Aires Football Club had forged its own rules, seemingly a hybrid between the Sheffield Football Association and Rugby Union rules. Charles Alcock's Football Annual, which no doubt reached Buenos Aires in the luggage of one of the football pioneers around this time, treated the kicking and carrying codes equally throughout. So what did the press have to say about the match? Well, 3 days later, the Standard recorded that fortune declared in favour of Mr. Hogg's side by 4 goals to none, which result chiefly owing to the superior play of the Messrs. Hogg. On the losing side, the play of Mr. Barge excited great admiration, and if one player could have saved the game, he certainly would have done so. We don't know who scored the goals or how they were scored. The final conclusion then, as the players left the field, was that it was remarkable that, considering it was the first time the players had assembled together, they all played well. The players decided to have another match later in the month and to persuade more men to join them. Deciding which football rules to use became a central concern. After several years of hovering between rugby and soccer, in 1874, it was finally decided that it was necessary to make a definitive decision for association or rugby. The press reported that it occurred in enforcing the rules, which differed from any existing code, and we should recommend the adoption of one of the two recognised sets of laws now used in England, in preference to continuing our own of last year. But it was this match, on the 20th of June 1867, that became the one that went down in history as the first official match of association football in South America. The stories of pioneering British footballing men in South America do tend to fetishise the first official matches of football, which were recorded by men like Walter Hild, who both played and kept the records, and without whom we wouldn't even know that it had taken place. Today, the place where the match was allowed to go on by the cricket club is the site of the planetarium in Buenos Aires, commemorated by 3 statues and plaques, which can still be seen today.